Right, so basically it's about miracles, but I've dug up some Hebrew words as usual. Oltiveh hitavut, divine intervention, because we call it a miracle, but it's actually divine intervention. We're in the season of Nes, and I'm sure Gaynor can tell her daughter when she gets home we're in the season of Nes, the season of miracles. Why are we in the season of miracles? Because we're celebrating Hanukkah. It's a festival of survival. It's a time of light and purification. What people miss when they see them preparing the oil is they forget that 8 days is the standard time for purification for service in the temple. So it wasn't the oil that was being restored and prepared, it was the people. Even if there'd been 8 days of oil, they would have still had to spend 8 days preparing themselves before they could minister again in the temple. So it was perfect timing. The oil was being refined, they were being refined, and then the two came together. So it was a time of light and purification, but not just with any source of ore, which is light, but with esh, fire, that Yahweh ordained to be lit in His Beit, His house, day and night, in His menorah, using His olive oil to His specific recipe. And it was there to signify His presence and His authority. So what is a nes? What's a miracle? My simplified definition is this. It's the impossible made possible. It's an event that defies the normal laws of physics. In the Brit Hadashah, 4 Greek words are principally used to designate miracles. One, semeion, or a sign, i.e. evidence of a divine commission, evidence of a divine message. And I've put some scriptures there. It was a token of the presence and working of Yahweh, the seal of a higher power. Number 2, terata, means wonders. A wonder-causing events, portents, producing astonishment in the beholder. These are Greek definitions. And this is why we have a problem, because again, like most of these things, you have one word translated into different words that mean different things. And words that mean a particular thing translated into other words that don't really mean what's trying to be brought across. Number 3, you have dunamis. People love to talk about dunamis. Dynamite, mighty works, work of superhuman power. And that's what most people are looking for now, signs and wonders. Instead of looking for the person who provides the signs and wonders. Of a new and higher power. And then number 4, erga, which is the word ergonomics comes from. Works. The works of Him who is wonderful in working, John 5. So that's the Greek definitions that try to come close to translating the word nes. Nes, or miracles, are evidence of divine intervention, of making a way where there is no way, humanly speaking. It's an event that's not governed by the fixed laws of matter or mind. It's an event completely beyond man's capabilities or powers. But the important thing is at the heart of every miracle, single miracle, is Yahweh. The Hebrew word pele, and its English translation miraculous, itself is a fairly modern phenomenon. People forget that a lot of English words are fairly modern in comparison. A lot of Old English is actually Old German. And you wouldn't recognise most of the words. So a lot of these words are still fairly new. By European standards anyway. It was used by the church, it was put together by the church, miraculous, to establish a cult of saints and shrines within Europe. And it happened from around about 1500 CE. And it was supposedly supported by hundreds of thousands of testimonies, which is where the word testimonies started as well. And these testimonies were by pilgrims who kept saying that they'd seen things, touched things, heard things, been healed by things. But that cult of the shrines and the saints is a practice that's still worth an absolute fortune to certain religious sites in Europe, in the Middle East and in other places. And who started it? Constantine's mother. Constantine was the emperor that established the church, and his mother established pilgrimages, established the holy sites that people are still going to in Jerusalem, that are just ones that she decided. They had nothing to do with the original happenings. She just decided that these were the sites that she was going to bring the pilgrims to. These are places where desperate people put their trust in dead virgins, dead saints, lifeless statues, the Queen of Heaven, and multitudes of bizarre physical objects. There are enough pieces of the true cross in churches around Europe to fill a forest. Bones, supposedly of saints, that they have there. And they fight with each other to have the most important artefacts in their church so that people will come to it. It's a tourism business. And even in England, they've still got pathways that are designated pathways, ancient pathways, that people aren't allowed to build on or encroach on, because they were the routes for the pilgrimages that people went to from church to church to church to church to visit all of these different artefacts. And basically the Crusades was just a giant pilgrimage. So they used these multitudes of bizarre physical objects to channel their healing and their miracles, rather than going directly to the only source of redemption, the only source of healing and miracles, Yahweh. And why do I use the word channeling? Because they pray to Him through the saints, through the statues, through these places. They don't go directly to Him. So Hanukkah, it's a Jewish time to celebrate our survival as a people and a nation. And what people don't realise is that Hanukkah is not just about lighting the candles and remembering the miracle, but every time it's celebrated, they celebrate our survival down through the centuries. And they regale stories of times where we've been under pogroms, where we've been under pressure, when we've been under all sorts of different things, but we've survived. So it's a celebration of survival. Even during the Shoah, the Holocaust. It was when it's celebrated as a triumph of light over darkness. So we celebrate the triumph of light over darkness. And we can do that over our own lives. If we're redeemed, then we can celebrate the battle that's been won, the celebration of light over darkness. Our lives are in darkness, and the Shamash came and lit a candle in our lives. And then He expects us to do the same to the other candles as they come next to us. Yes, it's a celebration of a past, but it still seems so relevant and contemporary today. When did this miracle with the Maccabees take place? And again, people say, oh, the Maccabees, these terrible soldiers. They weren't soldiers. They were Kohen. They were priests. Maccabee's father was Kohen Hagadol. He was a chief priest. They had a zeal and a joy for the temple. They cared that the temple had been desecrated, not because it was just a building, but because of who it represented. So 116 years before Yeshua came, Judah Maccabee leads 4,000 poorly trained, poorly armed Jews to victory against 47,000 battle-wise Greek troops. And these are the Greek troops that have gone from country to country to country and established an empire. Nobody had stood before them. They'd conquered everything. Isn't it interesting that they went through exactly the same process as we went through in 1948? Poorly armed, nobody would sell us arms, poorly equipped. They took old trucks and jeeps and put armour around the outsides of them, and they got an old biplane and they dropped bottles of explosives, and it really was a ragtag bunch of people. But they were up against enormous reserves of ammunition and stuff that the British had left behind for the Arabs, and that other countries were supplying to the other Arab nations around them, and their job was to come and just totally decimate us. But they forgot who they were fighting against.
They beat them 3 times actually. Maccabee came 3 times. The Greek came second time they could beat them, and then they fought the biggest army.
Yes.
47,000, and they played them again.
Yes.
That was the last victory.
That's right. Yeah. And we did the same in 1948. Why? For the same reason they succeeded. And the same reason we succeeded in 48. Because Yahweh was behind it. And how did he do it? Because we raised our arms to him. We worshipped him. We looked to him. Even if you take the Maccabees' use of guerrilla warfare tactics into it, it's still nothing short of miraculous. And so on the 25th of Kislev, which is interesting, it's the date that the modern Hanukkah celebration begins, the victorious Maccabees reclaim the Temple Mount and the Temple. And again they find what they already knew, that it had been used over and over again for pagan rituals and for pig sacrifices. They specifically sacrificed pigs on the altar because they knew there was nothing that they could do that would be more revolting and more confronting. But what they didn't realise is, whose temple was it? Who were they burning pigs on? On whose altar were they burning pigs? And we're in no different situation today. People are doing their own thing. They're saying it's okay. They're desecrating the temples. They're doing, they're doing pagan rituals. They're doing all of these things in his temple. I wouldn't mind if they actually called them something else, but they actually stand there and say, "This is the house of God." Which God I don't know, but and when they do that, that's dangerous, because he's saying, what you're saying is what you're doing represents me, and I won't stand for that. It's not the truth. They find it been used for pagan rituals, pig sacrifices. The walls have been torn down, and the once pristine altars and temple utensils have been totally defaced and used for profane purposes. The place is full of idols and their foreign pagan trimmings, particularly Zeus. There are lots of idols to Zeus because for the Greeks, he was the big guy. And the Romans took him over. And one of the statues that's around the Vatican at the moment, that they say now represents the 12 disciples, are actually pagan deities that they used to worship. And then when it became a state religion, they took the names off the bottom of them and put the 12 disciples' names on the bottom instead. And one of them is Zeus. I know the names of all 12 statues, and it's not the names that are on the bases.
Apparently the old names are still on the back of the bases.
Yeah, probably.
You're not allowed to go down the back.
Yeah. Purifying the temple to its original state is a demanding but proud task. So working carefully and quickly, the temple and themselves are soon ready for rededication, except for one thing. The menorah must be rededicated and lit in obedience to Yahweh's instructions. pure, specially prepared olive oil must be used. And when they got there, in a deep, dark recess somewhere, they found 1 day's supply. And they knew it would take 8 days to prepare enough oil. So they could have turned around and said, okay, we'll come back again in 8 days' time and do it again. That would have been the simplest thing, but they had a committee meeting, decided to have a whip round, collect enough money to buy some olives and prepare some olives, and then in 8 days' time they come back together again and have the whole ceremony. So it was 8 days as the time for purification, but it was also the 8 days of rededication for the Levitical priesthood for the service. But instead they took a bold step of trust based on the words of Torah. Because they read it, they knew it, and they knew all about Eliyahu and Elisha's miracles with oil. And because of that, they knew the principle of using what was in their hands and trusting Yahweh to multiply it, just as Yeshua demonstrated with the loaves and the fish. And he says, what have you got in your hands? And we say, oh, but we're waiting for the 2 million to come so I can set up this special trust and, do everything. And he said, no. What have you got in your hands? And that's always his statement to us when we come to a situation and we need resources and we need to do things. The first thing he says to us is, what have you got in your hands? You use what you've got in your hands and I'll multiply it. Then I'll supply more. But first of all, he wants to multiply what he's already given us, even though it doesn't seem like much. And that's talking about talents, our spirituality, every aspect of our lives. He wants to take what we've got and multiply it. And not replace it, as we so often say, oh, can you take this rubbish away and replace it with something good? And he's saying, oh, I've given you that. What's in your hands? Give it to me and watch how I'll change it and multiply it. Watch how I will feed people just with what you've got in your hands. It's a start. So just as in Eliyahu and Elisha's miracles with oil, they knew that principle, that Yahweh would multiply it just as Yeshua did. So they put the 1 day's oil and lit the menorah. But exactly 8 days later, it was still burning brightly. It wasn't starting to fade away. It was still burning brightly 8 days later. And as it was still burning brightly, then they replenished it with fresh oil. So it was seamless. There was no running out of oil. There was no getting low. It was burning brightly. They put the new oil in and it continued to burn brightly. So today's nation of Israel is still totally reliant on daily miracles for survival. Every single day. Without miracles, Israel will be wiped off the map. You look at the things that have happened over the centuries. Look at the 6-day war. I think that, to me, that's the most remarkable. Because he gave them a war where he got all rid of it in 6 days so they could celebrate Shabbat. It's like, we'll take care of man, the number of men is 6, and we'll do the 6 days, and then when it's all over with, then you can celebrate on Shabbat and have a rest. That in itself should have sent a message to the Arabs. There's no way they can look at that and think, oh yeah, the Israelis did that. They didn't have proper weapons. They didn't have enough supplies. They didn't have enough trained people. These guys are all doctors and pharmacists and poets and songwriters and politicians and money people, bankers. These aren't farmers with rough hands. They're not fishermen. They're not, they've come from places where their background is not of these things over the last couple of thousand years. These are the people that have won these victories that everybody stands back in awe. Moshe Dayan was brought up on a kibbutz. He was a farmer. He didn't learn his tactics in a staff training school at Sandhurst. He learned his tactics in the kibbutz. Survival. Defence force.
They were constantly being attacked.
They were constantly being attacked on a daily basis by the Arabs around them, on the kibbutz. They were battling for survival. All Israel is just a big kibbutz that's still under the same pressure. But it's still the safest place in the world for Jews to live. And it's interesting, I saw something the other day, and they sent a message to the guys still living in France, and they're saying, 20 years ago we called out to you and said, come home. Now we're saying the same thing again. Now you've seen what can happen, please come home. They're not saying we told you so, they're just saying we've asked you 20 years ago to come home. Now we're just saying the offer's still open, come home. And that just blessed me. And part of that was, they said, this is the safest place on the planet for you to live. So today's nation of Israel is still totally reliant on daily miracles for survival, but it is in deep, deep need of cleansing and rededication, along with all the other nations of the earth. Israel needs fresh oil to be prepared to relight the menorah of Yahweh's presence in Israel for the whole world to see. The pagan influences that are seeking to desecrate Israel and desecrate the temple needs to be removed. Their individual personal temples need to be rededicated to shine a light to all people. This is the kind of oil that the world needs, not the black sticky stuff that, just like sin, suffocates and pollutes everything it comes in contact with. Sin is like oil. Everything it gets to, it kills it, it suffocates it. No life. Olive oil brings light and it brings life.
That's nice, that one, very.
As the song says, what's the name of it? It's the Prince of Egypt. There can be miracles if you believe. That's the one sentence in that song. We were down at Peter and Kerry's in Wellington, and we were searching through the DVDs to find something. I found this Prince of Egypt, and I suddenly remembered, I think it was Gaynor had said, you need to see this Prince of Egypt, so I put it on. I was just blown away by it. It's beautiful. And this particular song, and I meant to do it, and I still mean to do it, I need to get this song, and we need to put it up and sing it. But one of the sentences is, there can be miracles when you believe. And it's interesting, even Yeshua, when he went through certain areas in Israel, he said very few miracles could be done because they don't believe, they don't trust. This planet that we're standing on right now, that we're living on, that is actually whizzing around at a few thousand miles an hour, we just don't realise it. This planet is a miracle. Read Genesis verse 1. It's a miracle. Why? Because only Yahweh could have made it happen. Only Yahweh could have made it operate the way it's operating right now. It's a perfect environment for us to live in. He's created a perfect environment for us to live in. The perfect amount of oxygen, the perfect amount of water, the perfect amount of trees and fruit and animals, everything that we need. The earth is a giant supermarket. And what are we doing? Trashing it. I think some of the people's opinions about that go overboard, but the bottom line is still we're trashing it. We're not appreciating it. We're not respecting it. We're living on a gift from Him. But how did He make it happen? Certainly not with a big bang, but certainly with a big voice. I'm not interested in the Big Bang Theory, I'm interested in the big voice fact. He spoke it into existence. If there was a few noises when He did it, I'm not surprised. His voice was probably echoing all over the universe. So the message today is do what He's asking you to do with what you have in your hands and trust Him for the rest. Do what you can do and trust Him for the rest. He will never call you to go through something and not make a way. If He's called you to it, He will provide for it and He'll provide a way forward. So shalom, Nes Machlet, miracle receiver, shalom.